In 1970, the economy of the coal fields was almost in complete collapse. Hundreds of thousands of people were leaving eastern Kentucky to move to Midwestern cities where they could find work. It's hard to almost imagine today, when everybody has cell phones, that idea of having a camera with motion pictures where you can document your family and kin. All of that was not possible in 1969 when Bill Richardson showed up at our journalism class. And he had this video equipment where we could experiment with them and to see what we could do, allowing people to see their world through a camera lens and to understand it from a different perspective than your daily life. One of the things we began to see right off is that we could begin to make films that show our world as we see it. We felt like the most important thing that we could do was to stay. That our job as young people was to figure out a way to stay in these mountains and not be dependent upon a coal mining job. Appalshop was saying, hold on a second, let's slow down here. Can't we create jobs for ourselves? Through imagination, creativity, hard analysis, and deep thought, can't we come up with meaningful work for ourselves and our families?
Appalshop started under the conditions of creating an agency and voice in rural Appalachia. Today, that's still what we do, is to produce art that tells the stories of communities and to try and do that in a way that's as authentic as possible.
This is as American as any art is. A culture of the Appalachian Mountains is one of the things that we've created as a country. For us, the closer we could get to the old-time culture in these mountains, the stronger our films were. We allowed people to speak for themselves. And we used the words and music of the people in the region. And we embraced that. There were 8 films that came out of the first year and a half of work, and those were really well received throughout the country.
The National Endowment for the Arts has been supportive of Appalshop since Appalshop started.
The National Endowment for the Arts seal of approval was really, really important because it said, as a country, we're saying this is art of the highest quality. And that meant a lot.
The idea that from the beginning that you would produce documentary work and all the other kinds of work that have been produced by Appalshop about a place that a lot of people who don't live here have represented, and that you would stay here and face the community that you had represented is just a powerful example of what documentary work can be.
It's through our relationship and partnerships with organizations like the NEA that have allowed us to continue to do work in this region and have the community really see their voices reflected in what it is that we produce. In that history, we developed about 100 documentary films, a lot of musical recordings. We have a fully functioning radio station.
We're on WMMT 88.7 FM in Whitesburg, Kentucky.
And then a theater.
Roadside Theater came because a couple of people came and said, I have this idea for how theater could be produced in these mountains using the storytelling traditions and the oral histories of mountain people. Those old stories were still alive and kicking, and those traditional storytellers were accessible to us.
Tracked it right down to this woman's house. They looked all over the place for it.
My first memories of Appalshop began as a young girl, and it wasn't unusual for roadside theater to just appear, and a car would pull in and characters would begin popping out.
Over the years, we've been able to provide a number of efforts to engage young people. For example, Wendy Ewald did a photography in the schools program, including 2 or 3 elementary schools, and there were students in each of them that learned photography.
We were outfitted with Kodak 126 cameras, and we got to take them home and shoot pictures of what's going on in our life as we saw it.
Wendy also recorded them telling their life stories. So this book, Portraits and Dreams, came out of the photographs that the young people had taken and the words that they told about their own experience.
Those pictures were displayed. We traveled with them to New York and to Chicago. That gave some validation that our community was picture worthy and that the stories that we had to tell, even as children, were important.
I think it's a model for many kinds of cultural organizations. Appalshop is an extremely positive influence on this area.
There are surrounding towns that were much more affected by the loss of coal than Whitesburg was. And Whitesburg has other businesses that are still thriving and profitable. Without doing a scientific analysis, I would say that there's some connection between the presence of Appalshop and the fact that our downtown still has some vibrancy.
As a local business owner in downtown Whitesburg, I could say that the Appalshop definitely has had a pretty interesting effect on the area. Downtown in particular, I really think you probably wouldn't have places like Summit City or Roundabout Records had it not been for the Appalshop being here.
We were young people when Appalshop first started. As we grew older, then we wanted to provide opportunities for other young people to have the kinds of experiences that we had when we were their ages.
We'd had a number of different partnerships with Appalshops. The NEA Our Town project was centered on this idea of next generation leadership, to do a conference that would bring in young people who were doing things to try and make sure that there was a central Appalachian for the next generation to live in. The conference ended up being called It's Good to Be Young in the Mountains.
I know that I was exposed to more than I would have been had Appalshop not been a part of my life and a part of the community.
The whole concept, and we've said this sentence for 46 years, Appalshop allows people in the mountains to show their world as they see it through whatever medium we could make available. That's what we've done.
To offer a critique that comes from within the community of things that could be better in the community, simultaneous to celebrating all the things that are worth celebrating in the community. That's a very rare combination of work. I wish every community had an Appalshop.